Hey everyone, welcome into MLS Digest. We're here to preview week 32 of MLS action, and it's only a 4-game slate, so very, very small and limited action this coming weekend due to some makeup games and the international break going on right now. So only just 8 teams in action. There will be 3 games on Saturday, the 6th, and then 1 on the 7th, Sunday Night Soccer. So without wasting any more time, let's just get into everything you need to know as far as lineups, who's in and who's out, as far as potential players on these teams that have been called up for the international teams, and some predictions as well. Getting into the first match here, it's the Dynamo hosting the Galaxy, and the Galaxy season is all but over. A couple more non-wins in their next 7 games, and they'll officially be mathematically eliminated, but it's essentially all but over here for them. As for Houston, they've been, kind of below average all season, but they're still hanging on in 10th. 6 games remaining for them, and just 1 spot below that, one of those play-in spots. So still a lot to play for, of course, fighting for survival. But they're going to be without Jack McGlynn, who's going to be on international duty. And also Ortiz in midfield is questionable. Meanwhile, for the Galaxy, Painsel's on international duty, one of those killer P wingers, and Nascimento, who's kind of worked his way up above Ramirez, especially in the second half of this season, as far as being that starting striker. He's been dealing with a bit of an injury, but it seems like he should be coming back for this one because, according to Greg Vanney, he was very close to coming back in their Leagues Cup run when they just had the 2 games this past week. And so he should be good to go for this one. We'll see if he starts, though, or if it'll be Ramirez or maybe Royce as a false 9 or something like that, and how they'll tinker with this lineup with Paintsel out as well, because they're going to lose a lot of that threat without both wingers being there. That's really been the only time that they've been able to be a dangerous team all season, and they put all their cards on the table in Leagues Cup, and it paid off. They didn't get into the final. They lost to the Sounders at home, but they beat Orlando in that 3rd place game, which got them qualified to the Champions Cup of next year. And so they're fully, reloading with Ricky Puig now going to be fully recovered from his injury by the time next season rolls around. No reason to risk him for these final 7 meaningless games, essentially. And so they're basically playing for pride at this point in general, and it's hard to really back them as far as motivation and, anything to play for. But as for the Dynamo as well, they're not really a consistent threat. They had a couple of signings and kind of hit the ground running with Linger at the start, but then since then it's been pretty inconsistent. Ponce's been kind of out of the lineup here and there, and it's really hard to trust this team. McGlynn's came up with a bunch of crucial goals, so without him as well in midfield, I feel like this one in the Texas Heat could get a little bit ugly, could just be one that's not fun to watch, and neither of these teams really look consistent or fun at the moment, especially the Galaxy with Paintsel out. So I'm really not sure which way to call this one, but I'm going to give Dynamo just a slight edge. But I think this one will be a lower scoring game, maybe a 1-1, because the Galaxy, especially as we've known at decision day last year, they lost out on the number 1 seed here in Houston, and they just don't really do well traveling in Texas. So I'm going to go for a 1-1 draw. Moving on, it's the Fire hosting New England, and this one is going to be actually at SeatGeek Stadium, the Fire's second home, their previous stadium for a very long time. And they've been playing there a lot recently. They played LAFC and St. Louis there. And I think they played 1 or 2 matches earlier on in the season, one of their Open Cup games. And so far they haven't lost there this season. It was a 2-2 draw against LAFC, one in which they went up twice and then lost the lead. And then took it to St. Louis, winning 3-1, I believe it was, or 3-2. And both of these teams just below that play-in line, but the Fire, realistically, the only team really left fighting for that positioning because, Fire 10th sitting on 39 points, New England, though, 31 points with 1 less game remaining. So they have to really win out here to even and hope for other teams to kind of drop off. But it's been very, very tight between, honestly, 5th through 10th in the East right now. It's only about 5 or 6 points. So The Fire, I think, even though they've been much better on the road all season, SeatGeek has served as a good replacement for them. They've really been, putting the sword to teams as far as the attack goes. And New England just has been in a bit of a rut. And here they're going to lose Campagna, their starting striker, and Fofana, one of their best center backs, to the international break. So they'll both be gone for this game. For the Fire, it's only Barroso, the right back, but we've seen the wingback situation for the Fire really not be too affected, whether that be Dean, Gutman, and it just seems like regardless, people can substitute and the system can still work. And of course, besides that, the Fire's attack has been really, really lethal, and we know they're going to give up goals probably. So here for my first best bet, I'm going to go for the Fire to win on the money line and over 1.5. I'm going to get good odds here. I'd rather just take the best odds that I can get by backing this Fire team, because it's very rare that they hold a clean sheet. But at the same time, New England without Campagna doesn't really scare me. They've been a bit tricky as far as holding teams off the board on the road, and maybe being a little bit too defensive. But here they kind of do have to expose themselves. They have to go for 3 points in these last 6 games. And so I think they have to get out of their shell. So we could see a bit of a shootout, but I think that suits the Fire anyways. They're going to be at home. And they've actually had a little bit of extra rest as well since they didn't play last week. They were one of a few teams on a bye. So they're fully prepared, I think, for this situation more than New England is. And they should be getting 2 regardless. The team total is already like minus 175 anyway. So I'm just going to pair that together. I think the Fire can easily even score 3 and, put New England to the sword as well. Moving on, it's St. Louis hosting Dallas. And neither of these teams in great positioning as far as squeaking into the playoffs. Dallas a little bit more so. For St. Louis, it's looking like another lost season. The injuries have really piled up all season, especially the Germans. Tyker at the moment hasn't been available for like 4 or 5 games, and looking doubtful for this one as well. And for Dallas, of course, they lost Lucho Acosta. He got transferred. And it looks like their top goalkeeper, Paish, is out for the season since they just signed Eloy Room, who used to be on Columbus, if memory serves me right. And so that's 2 big pieces on both ends gone for Dallas, but they have been one of the best teams on the road this season. St. Louis, home or away, just haven't been consistent. Their games have been a little bit higher scoring the second half of the season, which was the same trend at the back half of last season. But yeah, this is one where Dallas as well, coming off a little bit of extra rest on the bye from last week. But these are just 2 inconsistent teams. I think Dallas is just not in a good state right now for this run-in as far as this roster goes. Musa and Julio Santos and Farrington are really going to have to carry the load. But it's a team that neither of these teams really are able to possess the ball a lot. So it's really about who can take control of that in a game against, each opposition isn't comfortable and used to holding possession this season and being successful with it and direct with it. So it's one that's really hard to predict, and one that I think these teams will have to have a feeling out process for a little bit. I think they met earlier in the season, and St. Louis took the win on the road, if I'm not mistaken. Or actually, no, I think it was Dallas. But regardless, just especially with St. Louis's lineup, it's literally such a carousel that it's hard to call. So I think it's hard to pick a result, but I just don't see many goals in this game. To close out this very small slate, we have Sunday Night Soccer between Kansas City and Austin. For Kansas City, these last 6 games, they really have to go on a really good run here to contend for these final spots, because at the moment they're 8 points off 9th place San Diego. Meanwhile, Austin, despite what we may think about them and getting in a bunch of 1-goal games, being one of the worst attacks in the league as far as goals are concerned and XG, they're in 7th. And the West as well, you can say it's a little bit weaker, but regardless, they're hanging around despite losing Brandon Vasquez. And, they'll just keep taking their draws. They'll keep taking their points. But I think KC at home hasn't been all that terrible this year. I think this is a good spot to trust KC in a sense, and that's why for the second and final best bet, I'm going with Kansas City draw no bet in this Sunday Night Soccer matchup. Kansas City only losing Basong to international duty, not the most crucial squad piece. And Manu Garcia, he's been out for several games now, one of their DP signings in the midfield. So they've been kind of living life without him for now, but that doesn't worry me too much. I like this the strikers in this situation. And for Austin, they're the ones getting really burdened by this international break because you have Cascante, Pereira, Shvatok, and Uzuni all going to be out for this game due to getting calls for the countries. And Uzuni has really taken, shouldered that goal scoring load. With Vasquez out, he's really maybe not lived up to that price tag as a season-long thing, but at the moment he's getting them these really good results in the past handful of games and being a big part of that. But you're losing key players, 2 players on that back line, Pereira in midfield, and we'll see if Ilay Sanchez can get back to fitness because that's another kind of veteran presence piece in midfield that they would love to have, but he's also kind of questionable. So I think in this road environment, Austin's going to, of course, stick to what it knows, but I just don't think it's going to get too many direct attacking chances, despite the fact Kansas City is, of course, the worst team in the league as far as expected goals allowed goes. But I think Kansas City can definitely hang with them. I don't think they lose in this spot, but Austin's going to make it tough, going to make a grindy type of game. But I think Kansas City, I like the price here for the draw no bet, and I think they can definitely take all 3 points at home. They need it, and they're going to be on the front foot against a very weaker Austin lineup. So, as ugly of a play as this is and game, I think this is a good situation for Kansas City, and it's a very limited slate. So not trying to force too much here, and trying to get out of this before we get back to a full slate next week for week 33. So thanks for tuning in, everyone, and make sure to like this video down below. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. We're about to hit 500 subscribers, so I'd love to hit that soon before the regular season is over. And I'll see you all ahead of next week's week 33 preview.